What was said that forever changed your relationship with someone? I was a single parent, bringing a bunch of my 12-year-old son's friends out to pizza and a movie. We all crammed into two cars, and one child was next to me in the driver's seat. I was talking to all of them about the birthday and what fun we were going to have, and he whispered under his breath, "I wish you were my mom." I quietly said to him, "I'm sure you have a great mom, and she loves you very much." His name is E. His wish eventually came true. Over time, I realized E lived with his dad, and his mom was in jail for substances. He had only met with his dad a few times before he was placed in his care. His dad lived with a girlfriend, and this boy was sleeping on the floor of her den. He didn't even have a bed. He kept asking to sleep over Fridays, Saturdays, etc. Sometimes I would have him for Friday afternoon until Sunday night, and all the while no one ever called him to say goodnight or ask how he was doing. Did he need any clothes? Nothing. Once, in the middle of the night, my phone rang, and it was his dad who was asking if he could stay with me for a little while as he and the girlfriend were now split up. I said, yes, of course. That was in 7th grade. I had him all through high school and through college. Kids in school knew he lived with me, and when they were 14, a police car pulled up and another child got out and walked right into my house. His name is G. G's parents both went to jail, and when the police asked him if he had a place to go, he said he knew of a lady that takes care of kids. In all of my life, I think that is the most wonderful thing ever said about me. We bypassed the state and just let them stay as long as they needed. Occasionally, I would hear from their parents, but it was basically a terrible situation for both of them. My actual son is 30, and my 2 adopted kids are both 31 years old now, and everyone is doing great. Finished college, got good jobs, getting married, having kids. It is all good. Having these boys and my sons in my life added so much fun and joy every day. Was it hard? Sometimes, but mostly just normal. I was not rich. I think I made about $43,000 a year back then, and they ate so much food. So much food. Lol, but it was fine. Don't think of the cost. Think of what is the right thing to do and trust the universe has your back. Leap with faith. Props to my friends, family, and especially my parents who became instant grandparents to them and included them in every holiday, birthday, etc. If God puts a child in your path and you're given the chance to take them in, you'll want 2 things. Their parent has to tell both the school and the doctor's office that you're caring for them, get it in writing in case of an emergency. I was able to bring them to the doctor and dentist and go to parent-teacher conferences once that happened. You are a very kind soul. Story 2. My dad had recently ended it all a week before Christmas. There were no signs he was going to do this. It was totally a blindside. I decided to still do spring break in March with my 3 best friends at my mom's beach house to relax and get away. My best friend started breakfast one morning by asking if I saw any signs my dad was going to end it all. I said no, and my boyfriend, now husband, who came along agreed that he was happy and it was out of the blue. She said to me verbatim, "There were definitely signs, you just missed them. If you would have paid attention, your dad would still be here. It's technically your fault." After we all got home, I immediately cut her off. She wasn't invited to my wedding, let alone a bridesmaid anymore that upcoming October, and it blocked her on everything. 3 years and a lot of anxiety later, and that comment still screws me up. Your quote-unquote best friend deserves a lot of emotional turmoil in her life, I'll say that. Story 3. About a year into our marriage, and after I'd moved across the world for them and left everything I'd ever known, the more I get to know you, the less I like you. I am ashamed to say it took 3 more years before we were done. He made the decision to call it quits, which makes me feel even more ashamed in a way. However, after the first days of just complete shock, I felt incredibly free. His decision forced me to give up on the idea that somewhere deep inside of him, he still had a resemblance of the man I fell in love with. I did, of course, let him know that his comment really hurt my feelings. He just doubled down on why he felt that way and why he had a right to tell me. Only afterwards did I realize the kind of cruelty this man put me through. It is almost impossible to recognize it while you're in the midst of it, especially when it escalates so gradually. To everyone replying with your kind comments, thank you so much. It has been just over a year and I am indeed thriving now. And he definitely is not. To everyone who is in a similar situation, it may seem overwhelming and impossible to get out. It may feel like it'll be the hardest thing you'll ever do. Just know that it will never be harder than staying. Story 4. My ex-mother-in-law was a raging, malingering witch. She had gallstones but refused to get surgery and was instead just treating the symptoms. She would also use this to guilt her kids and me anytime we displeased her. So one day I got invited to a baby shower, but I didn't want to go. My mother-in-law thought she was coming with me. I had stupidly confided in a sister-in-law that I was not going to go, and especially not with my mother-in-law because she made me nervous. She was very critical and would only come back later that night to report to my ex-husband about every little detail of how I misbehaved. Well, my sister-in-law ran to tell her mom, and her mom flopped on her bed and cried like a banshee for hours about how I upset her and it caused her stones to act up. My ex came home from work and he would always find his mom first, no matter what. He saw her agonizing on the bed and ran to tell me off like I was a child. I said, "Please be serious right now. You know she always fakes these stupid pains whenever she's angry. I didn't even tell her I didn't want to go with her. Your sister told her. I just said I wasn't going. And he said I had to be nice to her because she was old and respect your elders and all that. Your mom makes me cry at least once a day. It's not fair that she makes my life miserable, but you still expect me to kiss her bum. You're nothing in this house. Nothing. You'll do as we say, and if you don't like it, then freaking leave." A year later, my oldest dual citizenship finally got approved, and I brought my kids to the U.S. I strung him along, letting him think I was still madly in love with him because I couldn't cross my son into the U.S. without him. As soon as I crossed into San Isidro, I texted him it was over and walked straight into a cell phone shop to buy a new SIM card. Story 5. My grandmother's dog passed away, and I went to her house to comfort her. We'd always been very close, so I stayed for a while, even though we had been fighting quite a lot. Well, I went over there, and she cried while I comforted her. But then that's when she said something that still sticks in my head. She told me, "Why couldn't something happen to you instead?" and walked away. I immediately went back home and stopped all contact with her for a few weeks. She still denies saying that. I distanced myself, though. Sometimes we still fight and we don't talk all that much, but I'm doing better these days. Story 6. I had a buddy who I knew since first grade. He was always arrogant, but I tolerated it over the years. I went away to some college in Europe and came back desperate to act rich and be high society. And he used to say the most horrific crap. Talk about how he purposely wanted to hire people to work for him who were in debt. His reasoning is it would afford him the ability to treat them poorly and they couldn't afford to quit. He legitimately hated poor people and talked about exploiting them all day. One day, we were at a grocery store that had a sandwich bar. He asked the lady who was making the sandwich for a certain topping and she said it costs extra. He kept pushing her to give it for free and she relented, saying she'd get fired for doing so. He said, "Nah, you'd probably get written up, but not fired." When we got into the car, I let him have it. I said, "How would you feel if that woman lost her job because of you?" He started laughing. "I don't give a crap. It's a crappy job. She can go get another crappy job." So I graduated college and got my first job. Pretty entry-level, terrible hours, little pay. He kept pressing me to tell him how much I made, and I kept turning him down. Finally, I did. Once he knew it wasn't much. One day we met up before my night shift job to get a coffee. He could see how tired I was, then we went on a tangent on how people who would get out of bed for less than 6 figures are stupid, and he'd never be that stupid. I didn't snap. I just said I'll talk to you later and got into my car and left, and never returned his calls or spent any time with him ever again. Some other friends gave me flack for it, but he screwed them over too, at a later date. Yeah, I think that's the best way to cut people off. Just slowly disappear. Story 7. My therapist said I've only been friends with you for so long because it's convenient. I don't have to try to make other friends or get out of my comfort zone, but other than that, we weren't really friends anymore. I think she might be right. Said to me by my best friend of 20 years. He was like an older brother to me. We were so close that we would have crazy ESP moments of texting each other the same thing at the exact same time. We just knew each other that well. He was my platonic soulmate. It's been 4 years since he told me that. 4 years since we last spoke. I just can't seem to heal this one. Story 8. My ex spent about 8 years always going on about being child-free and not wanting to ruin her life with kids. I was always on the same page because I know I don't want kids. One random day, she says, I'm thinking I'd like to have kids. I don't want to go through the hassle of raising them, so maybe we'll hire a nanny like my parents did, but I totally have baby fever and I'm not refilling my birth control anymore. That was the beginning of the end of our relationship. That's not fair to you. Story 9. I met my wife back in college. I was her English tutor. At the time, I was dating a woman with a very manipulative personality. I was not used to having a girlfriend. Wasn't confident, and she insulted or humiliated me when she couldn't get what she wanted or was in a bad mood. So my student, let's call her A, and my girlfriend at the time, let's call her K, ended up meeting in the middle of a tutoring session. K was mad that I was with another woman, even though I was being paid to tutor her. She interrupted us, saying she was going to be helping and keeping an eye on us. She didn't help. Instead, K made rude comments and jokes at A's hard time pronouncing L and R sounds. Pretty understandable, given those sounds aren't too common in Japanese. A can understand, but she could tell she was being insulted. The look on her face was pretty hurtful. Then and there, I grew a pair. After a brief and rather embarrassing argument, I told Kay that she was being disrespectful and she could just screw off until I'm done. She stormed off. I apologized profusely to A, saying today's fee was free and I'd understand if she wanted to find another tutor. Instead, she completely flipped the script. She said that after all the help I'd given her, she could tell that I was a kind guy. That and her English skills were getting much better with my help. It was just strange to her that somebody like me was with someone as mean as Kay. You're here working and your girlfriend didn't even bring you any food? That is weird in Japan. Needless to say, that caused me to rethink my life, but what solely was our next session? This one made a whole bento lunch by hand for our lesson. We're talking rice balls, eggs, the whole 9 yards. It was delicious. I was floored. And I thought, if this was how she'd treat her tutor, how would she treat her man? A went from student to diamond in my eyes. And so I broke up with Kay. Over the following months, A and I got closer. We kept in contact after she went back to Japan. One long-distance relationship, and 7 years later, I live in Japan now. We're married with 2 boys and a girl on the way, all because of a little kindness. Story 10. I let it slip at a doctor's office that I was feeling hopeless and down for weeks prior, but I lied and said that it was because of the news when, in actuality, I wanted to attend God's meet and greet. I lied because I saw that my mom was glaring at me and shaking her head as if to say, "No, you haven't." She got all mad and stormed out and yelled at me in the car. "Do you know how this makes me look as a mother?" I was 13. That's when I realized my mother never cared about her kid. Only appearances. And so I appeared to love and care about her for the coming years. Story 11. For 3 years, someone and I worked together side by side and developed a close friendship. One day, I got promoted to manager and became his boss. He threw a tantrum and screamed for hours, then refused to talk to me, now his boss, for 3 days. When I finally scheduled a one-on-one meeting, he told me, "My sole job now is to make it clear they made the wrong decision. It's in my best interest to make sure that you fail." I tried for about a month to make it work, but eventually he had to be let go. That was the end of that friendship. Good riddance. Story 12. I was barely holding it together as I was talking to my dad about how I'd be having to make some calls to the bank because there were thousands of dollars missing from my account. And he just casually says, "Yeah, that was me." He'd decided, without asking, to use my money to pay for household expenses like changing the tires in the car. Thousands of dollars gone. Just thinking about it now puts me in the mindset of a desperate man with nothing left to lose. The reason I didn't pursue legal action was because I'd be spending thousands more just to send him to prison. Instead, I moved out ASAP and haven't seen or spoken to him since. What a stupid and broke schmuck your dad is. Story 13. I was a dinosaur kid when I was little. Consumed books and information. I wanted to be a paleontologist. This was all maybe 6 to 10 years old. My obsession cooled a bit, but I still really think they're awesome. My aunt and her family are very Christian. My whole family is, but she was a lot more hardline. She homeschooled her kids, didn't own a working television, and restricted a lot of food as well. Just a controlling person, really, but we didn't see them often, and she was just quirky to me. One time, during a visit, I mentioned something about dinosaurs. I was maybe 13 years old. In a sweet but condescending tone, she said there was never such thing as dinosaurs. I countered with the fact that we have so many bones. She told me that Satan put the bones in the earth to defy God and have everyone question him. At that moment, I understood how insane she was and that adults are just people and can be idiots as well. Story 14. When I was 10 or 11, my parents had brought us to get some clothes from the thrift store. We didn't have much money, so we hardly bought new clothes. Most of my clothes I'd wear until there were holes or they didn't fit. My dad brought over some pants in the size I had been previously. I was angry and frustrated since it was late and he didn't want to be out. When I said they didn't fit, he told me that "you've gone fat" before storming off. I started middle school worrying about my weight. I, even now, still have issues with my weight and self-worth because of it. Is there a theme to these stories? Schmuck dad. Story 15. I asked my super rich aunt for help paying my rent once, and she called my sister to ask her what was going on since they were much closer than we were. My sister and I had been extremely close all of our lives. She told my aunt not to help since I was a user and that's where all the money was going to. I've never done substances other than some grass. I got evicted and ended up having to quit my job and move across the country. We now haven't spoken in almost 5 years. Oh, I was wrong. There's also Schmuck's sister. Story 16. And my friend told me she knew. A few months after my mom passed away, I was talking with a good friend, both 38 at the time. I was my mom's primary caregiver. I was reflecting on how hard it was at times. I mentioned helping my mom with medicines, and my friend said, "I know, my name." I began spewing what my mom and I went through, and she really listened. I realized that having gone through this herself, she understood completely. We've been friends since 3rd grade. The type of friends that pick up where we left off. That last empathetic, "I know, my name," hit in my heart something fierce. We've been so much closer since then. Story 17. My ex passed away, leaving me to raise my 2 kids, who both had disabilities, alone. Instead of dealing with the trauma, I drank, and always dumped my kids and my mom to go drink.
This happened for a few months before my Nana invited me over to the house to have a chat. She told me I had to stop running from my pain because I had to go through to get through it. My Nan lost an adult child 20 years ago. What do you know? She was right. I stopped avoiding everyone, including the kids, stopped drinking all the time, and she was there for me without judgment, and I honestly don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for her. Story 18. I live in New Zealand. We have a complicated history when it comes to speaking Te Reo Maori, native language in this country. For a long time, Maori weren't allowed to speak their own language and would literally be harmed at school for it. Now there's a huge push to bring it back. There's a lot of tension around it, especially between old white people and pretty much everyone else. People are so blatantly racist they don't realize it. Or refuse to pronounce Maori names and words correctly, even when told over and over again. This especially applies to place names, even the word Maori itself. I digress. A close family friend passed away when she was only 19. Her mother is Maori. At the funeral, her maternal grandfather spoke in Maori. My grandmother, who was standing next to me, leaned closer and whispered in my ear in an aggressive tone, "Speak English." She was literally angry that a man was speaking his own language at his own granddaughter's funeral. At that moment, I lost all respect for my grandmother. And I am sorry if I mispronounced any of those. I swear I'm not racist. Story 19. Guy I was friends with was hanging out at my place when my little sister, 10 at the time, he was 14 and I was 15, walked in and asked me for something. I don't remember what, and he said something rude like, "Go away, kid," or some crap, and she threw shade back, saying, "Maybe you could leave, you tub of lard." He was fat. And then he immediately said, "Go away before I use a toy on you." And I looked at him with disgust, and it took me all of my willpower not to clock him and throw him outside, and I just told him to leave immediately, blocked him everywhere, and told all of our mutuals what happened. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 20. I just met a man and been dating him for only a few months when we were invited to a party with his friend group. I was hesitating to go, as whilst I'm an extrovert, I wasn't interested in hanging out with a whole tribe of guys I never met. Further from that, in the past, I've had unpleasant interactions with a big group of young men, which, of course, added to my trepidation. I fully supported him going by myself. However, we had a conversation wherein he was trying to convince me to come. Somewhere in the midst of this discussion, he told me he loved me for the first time and expressed how much it would mean to him that I went with him as his partner. It was a very clear moment to me, wherein I instantly believed him and is a very fond core memory of our first beautiful moment. I was very nervous to say this, and I hadn't seen his vulnerability in him yet. By the way, he's a very tall, muscular man, so needless to say, it was surprising and incredibly endearing. It's now over 8 years later. We have a house of our own, a beautiful dog, and are getting married in April next year. I love him more and more every single day, and I truly believe that those very few words are a pivotal moment in our relationship. He showed me a sensitive and sentimental side, which has only grown in time. Love this guy so freaking much. Excuse me while I go and hug him. Yeah, congratulations. Story 21. You're a witch just like your mother. Like a decade later, I asked Dad for permission to attend Mom's funeral. They'd been divorced for 15 years and he'd spend the entire time saying worse than that about her on a regular basis, but when he asked, that's what rang through my mind, so I said no. So around 15 years later, I'm in my mid-30s and Dad is begging me to come be his medical proxy in the hospital, make decisions for him in his final days like I did for my mother. After talking it over with the kindest and most empathetic person I've ever known, I broke NC for the first time in years to ask if he needed me to pull the plug for him. Because my friend was right. It'd be wrong for me to leave a rabid dog put up to machines experiencing a lingering pain, no matter how much it hurt me in the past. Story 22. My extremely jealous ex-wife had a mental breakdown and I wouldn't give her the reassurance she demanded that I wasn't having an affair. This had gone on for years. I spent 20 minutes thinking, I'm going to have her committed, before she finally calmed down. She fell asleep and I went to sleep on the couch but was so unsettled and worried she might try something that I was up most of the night. Things were never the same for me after that. I brought it up a year later to show her how unstable our marriage was when she apparently thought everything was fine. I told her I didn't sleep because I was afraid you might come and terminate me. I expected her to be dismissive or even laugh. Instead, all she said was, yeah, that was a really bad night. Story 23. I was dating a girl I worked with at the time. I was on my way to work and found out one of my best friends from college got into a car accident and passed away. Got to work, sat down at my desk and just couldn't focus, so I told my manager and he said, go home. Take the day. I really appreciated that response. Then when my girlfriend got home, I was clearly devastated. I started talking about attending the funeral in D.C. when I was bawling. And she turned and said, oh, I have friends in D.C. We can meet up with them. I was shocked. That's where her thoughts immediately went.
made me question our priorities in our relationship moving forward. We eventually broke up. She clearly wasn't the right person for me. Story 24. When I told the person who mistreated me that they did not have my consent and that what had happened led me to nearly ending myself a couple months later, they replied, "Why do you put yourself in dangerous situations?" I mean, I was stupid to think that telling them what they did would matter. There were dozens of signs that this person was unsafe and unhealthy for me, but by God, did that feel like a slap to the face more than anything else. Really knocked the sense into me, and I cut them off after that. On a more positive note, anytime anyone has ever earnestly said, "I'm sorry" to me, my dad apologizing for not protecting me against emotional cruelty I endured from a relative growing up, my grandmother apologizing for rejecting me for being queer and coming around to accept me, etc. A genuine sorry does actually change the relationship forever and for the better, but they have to actually mean it. Story 25. What do you expect me to do about it? My mom, as she was dragging me back into my cousin's house after one of them tried to mistreat me, I was sitting in the living room, screaming for help, and instead of helping me, Mom came into the room and screamed at me to shut the hell up. I was acting like a spoiled brat as my cousin was mistreating me. Well, attempting to. My dad was sitting to my left. My aunt was on a chair to my right. No one said or did anything to help me. Dad tells my mom what my cousin is doing. Mom looks and walks off. I don't remember how I got free, but I did and ran. I left the house and started heading for the only person I knew there. Mom came after me and screamed it was all my fault. I was embarrassing her. I asked her how she could just let him do that to me, and she made the comment. I knew. I already knew I was alone, but I didn't understand why I felt that way, but I knew then. She confirmed it. Mom was never going to save me. She would let them do anything they wanted to me, and it would always be my fault. If I fought back, the adults would hurt me more. I was about 12 when this happened. I was shell-shocked for days after. I just shut down and felt wrong. Mom dragged me back inside and her family tormented me for the rest of the evening over my tantrum. She said a lot of other stuff, that she hated me. I was a freak. Why can't I be like every other kid out there? She wished she'd never had me, but I think that one hits the worst. She just saw the scene in front of her when my dad told her what was up and walked off. She just let it happen. I embarrassed her with my tantrum. She completely ignored what was happening to me. I feel bad for wishing terrible things on people in these comments, but it's so hard when people like this mother and the whole family exist. Story 26. I was run over by a car when I was in my early teens and had to go through a couple of years of intense therapy after some pretty bad damage. So I was homebound, and my mom had to take care of me quite a bit. I also came out at 16 to my parents due to stress levels in the house. At one point, my mother and I were arguing about something, and she said, "If I'd known I would be going through this much with you, I would not have had you." That pretty much ended a relationship at that point. I told her she was no longer my mother. She never apologized for it. At the age of 18, I made sure I moved away to go to college and I never went back. There's more to it, but that's the condensed version. Story 27. A former friend went off on me for recommending a movie to her. Because the movie had a trans leading character and she thought I was only recommending the movie to her based on that fact. She's trans, so she said, "You're only recommending this to me because I'm trans? Just because I'm trans doesn't mean I'm going to like all the movies with a trans lead. Never mind the fact that it was a movie about a topic we both enjoy, vampires, and was a decent comedy. No. Anyways, made me feel like crap, so I stopped talking to her. Still mad about it, though. Made me feel like I was being transphobic for trying to show a movie I liked. Story 28. I was having a hard time and said a lot of things to her about how anxious I always was. How I constantly overthink every little thing others do, and it leads to trust issues, as well as how I never feel like I'm able to make my own decisive decisions. And then her just shutting all those dumb thoughts down by simply saying, "That's why I fell in love with you." Even now, after we broke apart, that still feels like one of the most loving moments I've ever experienced. Story 29. Very close friends with someone for 20 years. Maybe not like sisters, but I considered her more like close cousins. Somewhere in a healing journey, I realized I was putting in most of the work and everyone else was more important to her, yada yada. I stopped reaching out as much. She calls out of the blue after like 3 months of not talking. I catch up for maybe a half hour and I tell her I've got to go. She exclaims, wait, hold on," then asks if I can give her a couple $100. At that moment, I realized the whole point of the call is to butter me up and ask for money. I very empathetically told her no, and her reaction was, Okay, geez, I just thought I'd ask." At that point, I saw our whole friendship and fast forward and realized it had been a very, very subtle history of my way or the highway and or what can you do for me. Our relationship only continued to fracture from there and we drifted further and further apart. The last time I talked to her was November 2021.
where she attempted to look for gossip about a mutual acquaintance for God knows what reason she felt benefited her. Didn't have any to give. She said, "Okay, I'll talk to you later." And we haven't spoken since. It'd been 6 months since I'd talked to her at that point, and the more time passes, the more I question why I even picked up that day. Story 30. I had a friend make some snide comments about the wig I picked out for my chemo hair loss. I was really trying hard to be brave and make the best of it. She said in a snotty tone, "I don't really picture you as blonde. If I had chemo, I would not wear a wig at all." I was really like kicking someone when they're down. Shortly afterwards, she made a crappy comment about where my husband was taking me for a vacation after my first chemo treatment, and I decided to instantly dump her. No explanation, just instantly I was done with her. I never spoke to her again. Story 31. I stopped being friends with two guys after one told me something about the other. We'll call them E and C. I moved away from my hometown almost 10 years ago, but I keep in touch with friends and family and visit every year. Well, 2 years ago, I was in town visiting and was at a bar with E. C couldn't go as he already had plans that night. E and I are catching up over some drinks, and I don't remember the conversation, but I remember us talking about the day I left. He said something he probably wouldn't have if he wasn't buzzed. He said the day I left, C cried after they walked out of the bus station. I've never seen either of them cry, but I know C is a very emotional guy. I mean that in a good way. After that day, I knew they weren't friends. Those are my brothers. Story 32. My dad was a self-employed, ultra-conservative. We didn't even have bootstraps and pick ourselves up kind of guy. And while I was completing my MBA, we talked shop and he unintentionally admitted he was performing wire fraud kind of regularly for his business. The relationship was already on the downhill path due to a variety of other factors, but that's the one that confirmed to me it wasn't just a narcissistic curmudgeon, that he was actually a bad human being. Haven't spoken in years. Story 33. Easy. My lying husband told me he plants fake stories and messages to his friends to see if I was reading his text messages. The only reason I was checking is because he's a compulsive liar. I'd never been like that with anyone else. And another time he admitted that he usually doesn't listen to me, and then he added, "If I'm interested in what you're saying, I might listen to you. I'm not a chatterbox. We rarely even speak. It's usually just him monologuing or soapboxing, but you can't ever seem to hear me. I hate him." Then why are you still with him? Story 34. I grew up in a military household, and with that, we moved very often. I was never in one place for more than 2 years. When I was in middle school, we moved to a new place, and my parents decided that this was it. Dad was going to retire and we'd stay here. This was going to be home. We got a house off post and everything. As a preteen, I was so excited to finally feel like I was from somewhere. I let myself get close to other kids from school. In 8th grade, Dad gathered us all at the table and announced we were moving again. Across an ocean. I was devastated. Began bawling my eyes out over dinner. My dad got upset that I, a middle school girl, wasn't excited for his promotion and left the table. Mom looked at me and said, "Go to your room and dry it up. When you're done crying, come out and apologize to your dad. You're being so selfish." I didn't come out. Stayed in my room all night. Mom came in later again and I stupidly thought she was going to comfort me. Nope. Again, she reiterated how selfish I was being and told me that I'd be fine and could start over again in this new state. I love my mom, but that night forever changed how much I could trust them with how I felt. I hid everything from them after that and moved out as soon as I could. Story 35. My little sister was about to take the train to go to my dad's for his birthday. Parents are divorced. I finished all my schoolwork, so at the last minute, I called him excitedly to tell him not to go pick her up from the train station because I'd be bringing her and joining to celebrate. Paused and said they might not have enough food for an extra person. Broke something in me. After my mom tore him a new one, he called me back to tell me they would make it work and I'm welcome, but I obviously declined. A lot of people don't deserve to be parents. Story 36. You were the kiddo who wasn't originally planned to live with us. When I was little, my mom went through really tough times with her mental well-being because of some awful stuff that happened to her as a kid. When I turned 3, my dad left with a neighbor, leaving my mom on her own with 3 kids. No help, no money, nothing. Over the years, this really took a toll on her and she got worse. My sister started being unkind to me and even hurt my arm. My mom felt she had to send my sister to live with my dad because she couldn't cope and I wasn't safe. A few years later, my brother went to stay with Dad for a few months before moving out on his own. I was much younger than them and stayed with my mom alone. I became her young helper. Things got so bad that I was going hungry because she couldn't afford food, even though she could afford drinks every day. My sister had to really fight for my stepmom to let me come and stay with him. I didn't know how much he fought until much later. When I finally went to live there, a really broken kid, the first thing my stepmom said to me was those words. No comfort, no love, just a harsh reminder that I didn't belong in their world.
The way she said it made it clear I was never going to be welcome. From then on, she was unkind to me from when I was 12 years old. Out of all the terrible things she said and did, that one always hurt the most. Now I really struggle to ever feel wanted or accepted. I always feel like I'm a burden to the friends I see as family, even though I'm independent and doing well. I don't ask anyone for anything and would rather struggle on my own than ask for help. I really wish things were different. Story 37. She didn't say anything, but that was what made things change. We've known each other for years. Right at 8th grade graduation, she saw me get into the alt-right pipeline and pull myself out. I was closer with her than I was with most people, and that says a lot. I was talking about my plans to see Barbie or Oppenheimer on the same day with a friend. She said I can join her and a group of her other friends. So we tried to make our schedules work, but her response became longer and longer. I texted again, trying to figure out what she had planned. To this day, she hasn't responded. We had a college class together, and she acknowledged my existence like nothing ever happened. No, I'm sorry I kept you in the dark, or let me make this up to you. I haven't said anything to her because it needs to matter to her. And so far, a year later, she has shown me it doesn't. Story 38. My brother once blamed me for everything, even my relationship with my in-laws. He told me, "You're not submissive enough and not buttering them up enough. That's why your relationship is bad." So I asked him, "Okay, if it's because of me, then why are you saying bad things about my kid, their own grandchild?" He told me, "That's your personal issue and I'm not going to comment on it." That's the day I went very, very low contact with him. My mother-in-law is always horrible towards me and my husband finds no wrong in it. After many years, I finally said something back to my mother-in-law. It wasn't backtalk, I just tried to politely explain my side. However, my husband found it offensive and said many things. I knew from that day my relationship with him was over. "Aw, mommy's boy. Mommy's boy." Story 39. I was with my family. I said it to my ex-partner, who had to leave because he was going through psychosis and wouldn't get any help. Things got really bad. There was an accident where he lashed out at me. So much happened. One day I was with my family watching the solar eclipse and he just kept calling nonstop. He was saying things that were just so far out there. There was no way to have a normal conversation. I politely asked him to please stop calling. Finally, I said, "Please give me some space. I'm with my family right now." It was at that moment that we both understood that our 11-year relationship had come to an end. It wasn't my family in that way anymore. I still care about him deeply, but I have to prioritize my own well-being. I can't continue my life with someone whose behavior is unpredictable and impossible to navigate, especially when they aren't willing to seek any kind of support to get better. Story 40. Back in high school, I was dealing with some tough stuff, PTSD symptoms, and I started going to therapy. I kept it totally private. My friend in class had no clue why I would leave early every Thursday and show up late to lunch. After months of this, I finally opened up a little and mentioned some of the things I was dealing with, like ADHD, which later turned out to be autism. Years later, right after graduation, I was talking to this guy I had a crush on, and he said, "Sometimes it feels like you're not even trying to understand me." I tried to explain my perspective and my diagnosis, but honestly, looking back at our messages, I can see I definitely wasn't showing much understanding, and he had every right to feel that way. But what really hurt and completely ended any feelings I had for him was what he said right after that. He said, "Oh, you were being serious about that? We all just thought you were trying to get attention." Now, get this. He had a crush on me too. It wasn't just me feeling something. We were both thinking about maybe starting to date, but that comment just shattered me. I've been so ashamed, embarrassed, and scared to tell them what I was going through, only to find out that they all just thought I was lying. Story 41. When my ex-boyfriend told me that you're never there when I needed you the most. This was a few months after his father passed. The day his dad passed, I was at a music festival in San Diego and I left within 30 minutes of being there and drove back to LA to support him. I was there for my ex and his mom during the funeral. Then had to go on a business trip on the East Coast and couldn't support him then. Somehow spending my weekends through the summer and helping him and his mom clean their house or apartment building they had owned wasn't enough. There were more things, but that's the one that stung the most. Glad he's the ex now. Story 42. I want to break up with you. 4.5 years into our relationship, I was thinking about proposing to her. Later, it turned out that she fell in love with someone else, and instead of telling me that she has feelings for someone and talking it through, she just straight up lied to me that she wants to be alone for some time. Yeah, if you want to be alone for some time, you're not going to jump on someone else's next week. Changed my whole life, not just my relationship with her. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.